If you found this podcast, chances are you're a high achiever and you're successful. But now you're stuck and stressed, and you realize that everything you've created hasn't given you the fulfillment and the joy you thought it would. This is where we discuss the keys of high performance mindset and stepping into the next best version of yourself. Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast, where we bring you stories to inspire you and strategies to help you tap into your potential and become your best self. Today, we're joined by Chad Dunn, certified behavioral change specialist, co-founder and CEO of Move, Human Performance Center and Physical Therapy, where he blends physical training and mindset coaching to help people transform their lives. His journey, which we'll hear about in a minute, has given him a unique perspective on human potential and has led to helping others move beyond their limitations, which we talk about a lot on this show. Now, whether working with professional athletes, people recovering from catastrophic injuries, or youth seeking direction, he brings the same message, which happens to be the title of his book, Mind Over Virtually Everything. Chad Dunn, welcome to the show.
Ian, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So since we had a chance to talk a little bit earlier last week, I've been excited about having this conversation and hearing more about your incredible journey and your incredible story. So with that, let's kind of just dive right in for our listeners and viewers who don't know a whole lot about Chad Dunn. Can you tell us about the journey you've been on since you decided to pursue an interest in physical therapy out there?
Well, as a kid, I was very fortunate that I had a dream and I knew that I wanted to do in life. So I was one of those from an early age that knew that had a plan, and I knew I wanted to get into physical therapy. I knew I wanted to get into sports medicine. Obviously, I grew up in an athletic background. I did BMX, I did wrestling, I did football, but that was not the ending of it all. That was not the ending of it all. My life took some turns in between. I started training. I went to ASU as exercise kinesiology, biomechanics. That was my major focus of everything. But at the same time, too, is that, I started to get into the party and I started to lead different things, and as a personal trainer, we like entertainment, and so I got into the entertainment aspects of everything. Working in a high fluid, I was working in Scottsdale, so we had some good clients and had some good athletes that were around, and just people in general. And next thing you know, one thing after another, I kept on training. I started selling drugs. I was in the South Side. I was making a profit, taking it back up to Scottsdale. In the same time, I was still doing my job. So again, don't ever judge a book by its cover, And next thing you know, the lifestyle, don't get high on your own supply. That came around. The next thing you know, I found myself smoking crack and living at the bottom of the bottom. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. Wow. So I still, at this time, while I was smoking crack, I was still in the fitness industry. I was still doing spin classes. I was one of the first to get certified by Spin out here. Johnny G was an original guy with the spin instructors back in the day. And since doing the BMX, I thought that it would be pretty cool to do the spin classes. I used to smoke crack before I taught my spin classes. We played weekend warrior football out here. We had an adult league. It was a full contact flag football, full contact. I'd smoke crack on my way before I went and played football games, But that's what they done in the 70s. They in the locker room, they were doing the cocaine. Unfortunately, it was just a different story. So I'm an entertainment guy. I love adrenaline. I love rushes. And that's what got me into different places in my life where I've been able to learn through curiosity. I've been able to learn through curiosity. I've been in places people haven't. So long story short, the drug addictions, and I don't like to use the word addiction. I like to use choices. There were some situations that happened, and I never went back to the hood. I stayed out of there and got hooked back up with some of my high school friends. And next thing you know, I was bringing some money back from Hawaii illegally, and ended myself in prison for 30 months. So I never stopped doing the physical therapy. I never stopped doing the training or the physical therapy thing. When I was in prison, I was a trainer, right? Everybody want to work out inside there. So we had a yard. We had a nice weight pile. We had about 10,000 square feet of weights over there, which was very good because I was in the federal system. And movement is medicine. Movement is medicine. So it was one of the things that kept me going. And I had a good crew in there. I had a good crew of some guys that I was able to connect with, and we were able to do our thing, And that prepared me for life on the outside. And here I am, Move Human Performance Center. I'm the co-founder, my wife and I, owner. And we've been in business for about 9 years now. We help people overcome catastrophic injuries, follow their dreams. We work a lot on the mindset. We work a lot on the physical aspects. And we love people with comeback stories.
Well, you certainly have one. That is for sure. I mean, just from the highlights of what you just gave us, I mean, going from, being a
a personal trainer and being in physical therapy to becoming addicted to drugs or making choices that did not serve you the best, to using drugs, becoming a convicted felon, going to federal prison, and then getting out and turning your life around and becoming, a successful CEO. Definitely a powerful comeback story. Now, I'm curious to ask, was there a single turning point that started your transformation? And if there was, how do you help others? This is kind of, I guess, a two-part question. If there was a single turning point, how do you help others identify there?
I give it all to my wife. We've been married for 20 years now. And she, and we always ask, what's your why? What's your why? And at that point in time, she really wasn't my why. She was my reason. I met her. She was bartending. I wasn't supposed to be drinking. I was on federal probation, pre-trial release. So I wasn't even supposed to be drinking. I went to go meet one of my friends just so we could discuss the last 9 months of misery that I just went, or 9 weeks of misery that I just went through. The whole transfer center. I flew from Arizona, Oklahoma City to San Bernardino, California. I flew over to Hawaii. My case is out of Hawaii. I spent 9 weeks in the system trying to just even see a judge. So when I came back, I had a lot to talk about, So I sat down with my friend. We went to this bar. I met this bartender the first night and I said, I'm going to marry you. I want to marry you. And she said, get in line. Okay, I'll wait. I'll get in line. Hopefully I got some time, right? I don't know how much time is coming to me. And I don't, I had a pretty large thing, but she said, get in line. So I did. I got in line, but I knew that was something that I wanted. She was not the easy pushover lady, She was not the person that I knew that was probably not going to help me become the best person that I could be. I saw something there, and it was quickly, and that love at first sight. That's really what it was, So that was my reasoning. Now, at the same time, I got 2 DUIs when I was on pre-trial release. Right, I pushed the envelopes. Right. And not supposed to be having any crimes. In total, I got 6 DUIs. Not proud of them. I'm not proud of them. But again, I was always out in Scottsdale partying. I'm with people. I got to go to work the next day. I got clients at 7:00 in the morning. So I take the risk. We didn't have Uber back in the day. We didn't have Lyft. So through my poor choices and my poor decisions, I ended up getting 6 DUIs, My last one was the last time that I drank. It was in 2000. I got the rest 2007. Was the last time. I haven't drank since, and I married the sober bartender. So the support system, you have to have a support system. When you're going through anything in life, whether it be overcoming a catastrophic injury, dealing with a medical issue, criminal conviction, or even just creating a business, even relationships, you have to have a support system. And I knew from day one when I met Jackie, she was going to be my best support system.
That's incredible. And you're right. As we go through these challenging times in our life, it is very advantageous for us to have people.
And they got to be real.
The people that.
And they got to be real. As you know, they can't just be feeding you bullshit. You're not going to make it.
Yeah, right. No, they got to be the people that you can trust, that are going to hold the mirror up to you in good times and bad. Right. So when dealing with people that you serve, how do you help them figure out that turning point, that point in their life where they need to identify that, hey man, it's time to make a change. And I needed to go in a different direction.
Life is very easy. When you live the other life, looking for drugs, trying to look the next score, looking over your shoulder, running through the hood, trying to survive, that's a hard life. And people get caught up into that. Oh, it's so hard for recovery. Oh, it's so hard for me to make the change. It's not, the first step, So my methodology that I use is called 1 in a row. And I've used it with one of my good basketball coaches. He trained Mike Bibby and Richard Jefferson, all the guys in the past from Arizona. Name's Art Guy. He said, in order to become a good basketball shooter, you got to start by making 1 in a row. And I was sitting in prison. I thought, you know what? That's the method I'm going to use when I get out. Right? It's 1 in a row. It's 1 day every day. You have to come in ready to do it. You have to be optimistic. I don't live with an ounce of negativity in my body. I don't live with an ounce of pessimistic in my body. I believe that people can do anything they want to do because I've done it. I've recovered from certain situations. I've built certain situations. I've helped others do it just through relating of information and my methods, just myself. And when it's time to do things 1 in a row, it's either now or never. So you have to get to them. Are you ready to do this? Are you ready to live the easy life? It's going to struggle, but everything's a struggle. You have to learn to struggle in the right direction.
Right. So it sounds a lot like you're talking about perspective.
All day long. That's what you got right here, right? It's all about perspective. But it's really more about positivity, right? It's about the positivity. A lot of people see the perspective and have perspective, but it's clouded. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to do this. I got some excuse. They talk themselves out. The war's lost before it's even begun with a lot of people.
Right. And that's where the mindset comes in, which leads me to my next question. So your company, Move, blends physical training with mindset coaching.
Yep.
Do you have can you pull a specific client story, let's say, where mindset work helped unlock a measurable performance change for them, and kind of walk us through the steps that you use with that?
Spinal cord injuries, right? Spinal cord injuries are tough. They're the only injury that cannot be cured. When I got out of prison in 2007 or 2008, I started working first day out of work. I started working with the people I had. My guy's been with me forever. In 2013, I got a call from this guy, Eddie King. I reached out to Eddie King. He was a BMX rider, Hall of Famer, mountain bike rider. He broke T11, T12 in his back. As a young kid, I used to look up to him, watching him race. And so I sent him a message on Cambridge Medical and said, "Hey, Eddie, if you ever come to Phoenix, Arizona, I'd love to work with you. Right? I'd love to help you battle back from your injury." On the physical therapy side, not knowing the mental side that I was getting myself into, and this is a whole transformation of me in my career at this time. I've worked with ACLs, I've worked with labrum, shoulders, hips, ankles, and all that stuff, but this is a paralyzed guy. This is somebody with a spinal cord injury. I don't know anything about spinal cord injuries, but thankfully in the world nowadays, you can go ahead and you're self-taught. You can learn. There's information, research. You have to be. In order to live in this life, you have to be self-taught. You can't be following the trends and the Joneses because they're going to lead you in the wrong direction. You have to know what you need to do, just like my recovery. Every spinal cord injury is different. What works for me is not going to work for you. And so 3 months later, I get a message from Eddie King. He says, "Man, I'm moving to Phoenix to see my mom, to be with my mom. I'd love to meet up." He come wheeling into the front door in a wheelchair. First time I looked at him, he still had these massive thighs that he's always had when he raced BMX bikes. He didn't lose any atrophy of the quads themselves, but everything had atrophy. So I knew I had something to work with. And I asked Eddie, I said, "How you feeling?" He says, "I feel great." I said, "What's the prognosis?" The doctor said I might not ever walk again, but I told him, "You don't know who you're working with." That's all I needed to hear. 62% of the people, 67% of the people go back to prison. I'm not going to be one of them. So I knew for myself, while I was rehabilitating him, he could help rehabilitate me. And we're going to do the one in a row, one step at a time. And our logos that we have, it's a handicapped person in motion. It's also an athlete in motion. That's our brand. And so it's people that are going to overcome things, but it started out with spinal cord injuries because it's one step at a time. And during that, you have to learn to turn one thing on and one thing off. If you have both legs turned on, you're not walking, you're standing. So you have to be able to release the other leg and you have to have control. But I don't know if you ever have control. Again, with the lack of impulses that go through the spine and the body, you got to regain command. And that's what we're trying to do is we're getting the nerves to take command from the brain to refunction the body. Just what I did with my recovery. So here we are, 354 days later, we had Eddie back on a bike riding. Within that year, he was walking again, right? Unbelievable. I met Amy Van Dyken. We went to a big seminar with her. We picked her brain apart a little bit. And with Eddie, first thing for him was get in the pool. Best thing you could do is get in the pool because now you're either going to float or if you can activate and you can stand, right? And so it was one of the things that we did. It was part of our rehab process. And so we had him in the pool grinding. Then he came back into the gym. We did all of our weight stuff. But we sat down with Amy Van Dyken and Eddie asked her, he says, "Are you in the pool?" And she says, "No, I'm not in the pool." And he says, "Why it's not?" She goes, "I was an Olympic athlete. I was a gold medalist. I can't swim." And he said, "It doesn't matter. If it's going to help you get better and it's going to help your rehab, why don't you do it?" Image, right? It's the image. When you learn to accept that new person that you're given, that's when you're going to be able to make those changes. And, 2 months later, we seen her jump in the pool. She was over here at Gainey, one of the health clubs. She put on her only swimsuit that she had because she said she threw everything else away. She kept her Olympic gold medal swimsuit. She jumped in the pool and started doing some pool. That's all you can do. It's called drive. It's called drive and ambition. Right? So currently to this day, Eddie's had a hip replacement. He's a fully functioning paraplegic with a hip replacement. Back doing bikes. He's an ambassador for the e-bikes. Just due to the fact is no motorized vehicles are allowed on some of the state trails and all that. Well, for the ADA and the disabled, what if they need a little bit of a pedal assist? Not to let them ride, but what if they need a little bit of help? So now he's still in the BMX community, but he's doing things for the e-bike community as well. So again, with the spinal cord injuries, as you know as well, the paralysis, it's one step at a time. And it's miraculous of what you've done. I saw the marathon that you ran after your injury. And, I give you praise to do everything that you've done because it's a long journey and nobody knows. Every spinal cord injury is different.
Yeah, it is a very, very long journey. And there are those days where you're up and there are those days where you are down. And there are a lot of people out there that are not like Eddie, that don't see the challenge in front of them and feel like it doesn't matter what it takes. I'm going to overcome no matter what, and I will do whatever it takes to get there. So what do you say to those individuals? Because I know, at least with my own recovery journey, being in physical therapy, being next to some people that came into therapy that weren't in it to win it. They weren't there with a no matter what mentality, right? And as I'm sure as you can speak to as a therapist, those individuals, they're not going to have the success that the other ones do that come in with a positive outcome and they're just ready to get to work. So what do you say to those people who are coming in with the whole hum, woe is me, why did this happen? I'm never going to be the same. How do you help them turn their mindset around so they can focus on recovery and becoming the best version of themselves?
Well, from the therapy standpoint, well as I do, is that it takes the environment to be in to make you help you get better. You have to be in a competitive environment. You can go to a spinal cord rehab center and you're going to see people in there that are stuck in a wheelchair with some higher some cervical levels or higher thoracic levels, and they're non-functioning, and so it can be mentally draining at times. Obviously it can be motivating as well, but when you're around athletes and you see people doing things and you see people grinding for the NFL or you see people grinding for the NBA, we have a lot of local high school athletes of all different sports that are at the top of the country. And so our therapy, they go side by side. So with Eddie, probably a couple of weeks after I had Eddie, I had this guy come in. He was on fire for about 2.5 minutes. Got 67% burns of his body. So when Eddie seen Anthony come in, he thought, shit, my life ain't that bad. At least I still got my body, my functions. I ain't burned, And then Anthony looked at Eddie and said, hey, at least I can walk right now. Because Eddie was still kind of trying to regain his ability to walk. So you put something around everybody else, and that's what we've done is we've created an environment that move. And this is to what I was doing from before, when I had Anthony and Eddie going, sure enough, I had this gentleman that was saving a police officer in Phoenix and he was shot by the suspects. And so was the police officer. He got a point blank gunshot right to the stomach in the hospital for 8.5 months in the ICU. I got him the first couple of days when he got out of therapy. His name's Phil Grigg, no longer with us, but he made it, that surgery. He just passed away. COVID took him. Here's a big old tough guy, man. And COVID ended up getting him a couple of years ago. But the gunshots, the crime, that couldn't do it. So I had a gunshot, I had a burn, and I had a paralyzed guy all coming together at the same time. There ain't no time for weakness. There's no time for weakness. And so with that, that helped jumpstart me. And that's how I opened up Move. I took those 3 cases. They're all mental. And I said, I'm going to create an environment that's going to be very motivating. That's going to be very positive. And we're going to take people that are down on their luck. All of my employees, they've all been through something. First thing we do when we do our hiring, have you been through something? Because I need tough people to work with me. I need tough people that I'm going to work with. We're not here to collect this trophy. We're here to win.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF.
That's huge. Having somebody that can empathize with your client when they're working with them, someone who can actually talk from experience, not from just read or simulated knowledge, but they can actually talk from their own lives and understand. Because that's, when you're going through something like that, that is life-changing, and your everyday life is more difficult than everybody that that you look around, and just waking up and getting out of bed is a challenge. As soon as you open your eyes, you have a challenging day. So it's very important to have somebody that can relate to that on some level in order to be able to empathize and help you through those times where I don't care how positive you are or the type of person that you are, you're going to have those days where you just don't feel like
you're going to have
doing the work. And that's, like, as you said, having that support system or having that person with you that can challenge you is so, so important.
Yeah, and it's contagious too, right? It's contagious. You don't want to. Nobody wants to be the weak link. Now, don't get me wrong. We do have some of those, but when they come in and Kane, the gentleman that works for me, my other trainer, my right hand man, the kids come in after school or whatever. They come in to work out, and like, how you feeling today? They said, I'm tired. He says, go right back out the door, change your motherfucking attitude, and let's walk right back in with a different attitude, right? Because I can't have you tired when I got people trying to come back from injuries. And that's what we do. We want to help people become the best version of themselves, and it's real, you're not going to get walking just by letting somebody else believe in you. You got to believe in yourself. The positivity to take the next step, and to keep going. It's very easy to sit in that wheelchair and just give up. I've worked with many of other spinal cord people. I've got two more walking. I had another girl. She broke her back. She was a little bit lower. She was a L345 car wreck, flipped over. She was the first girl to kick footballs in Arizona history for males football, high school football team. And so I was reached out by the media, and so we got Kristen, we got her back going. And when she first came in, I knew she was going to be fine because there's a lower level injury, So he's just going to have to regain the ability, It's going to have to get some repetition going, get the nerve system going. But we went out about a year later. She kicked the field goal again. It went through the uprights. It wasn't a 50-yarder, but it went through the uprights. The game of life is more important sometimes than the game of football.
Yeah, that's that is a lesson that I had to learn through my own experience about being able to do the things that I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do, the things that I was able to do before my surgery. And I had a doctor tell me that. And we also did mention that you're most likely going to be able to do the things you were able to do before, just not as well as you do them before. And at that point in my life, I was still young and naive, and I was like, F you, doc, whatever. I'm gonna make 100% recovery, And now, 15 years later, as I'm also older, 15 years older, I had to come to the realization that I will never be the person I was before my surgery, which is a good thing, really. But what I had to realize is that I will be 100% of the person that I am now. And that's what we need to be focused on.
And that's what I tell everybody too, when we all hear in part of my book is ignoring the noise, and it can be the outside noise or the inside noise. But there's a lot of noise around us, especially in this world that we live in nowadays. And so how do I ignore the noise? We've been to physical therapy. I've been to counseling, maybe I've had some different things for substance abuse classes or whatever, but we've been to things, and people are trying to tell us all this. But what happens is I tell everybody, don't be the inner critic, be the inner coach. No matter what point of life that you're at, and don't be the inner critic. And that's one of the biggest things is that we talk down to ourselves. Never once am I the victim. Never once during my story was I the victim. I loved every minute of it. I enjoyed every minute of it all. I take credit for every minute of all, the good and the bad. But that allowed me right now to take credit for my success. It's me. It's me. And it's pushed by a lot of people. That's where your recovery comes in. It's me. We have done it.
Right.
And so now when we give back to people, whether it be through speeches or through books, writings, podcasts that we do, we're a credible source, and it does. It takes somebody that's resilient. You mentioned that earlier, the ups and downs of going between it. I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and I'd like to share it. I don't know if have you seen that video of the Duke professor talking about resilience this year? She's got the psychology. She's a PhD, and she has on the chalkboard. She's sitting up there, and she says who we are, on one side of it all, and she says who we want to be is on the other side of the chalkboard. What we know and what we want to know is on the other side. And in between it, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. It's going to be some gains. It's going to be some falls. Resilience, not how many times you get back up. It's how many times you fall. It's how many times you get back up. We talk about it all the time. But she said this ups and downs, this squiggly line in the middle of it, that's what's called resilience. And what it is, resilience is the ability to stay in the frustration period the longest. Right? It's going to be frustrating. You're not going to know everything. You're going to have to learn firsthand. There's a lot of trial and error on spinal cord stuff, or just even recovery. That's why I don't like to use the word addiction, because I think it's choices. I had one class that I had to go out to when I got released from prison. There was one more class I had to go for substance abuse, part of the court order program. And, before they tell you, hey, you're an alcoholic, you're a drug addict and all this stuff. And that really wasn't true, because I didn't like to drink first thing in the morning. I didn't need alcohol. I needed party. I needed entertainment, but, it's just unfortunate I got in trouble. I stopped smoking crack. I stopped doing all the stupid shit I was doing. I stopped chewing coke. I can stop whatever I want to do. It was my choices. And so when I went there and I had this last guy, he says, you know what? I got a gambling addict over here. I got a heroin addict over here. I've got a girl that sells her kid for sex over here. I got people getting out of prison over here. He said, you're never going to hear me say the word addiction in here. He goes, and I know it's a word because we have to use that. He said, but for the people in my class right now, I'm going to tell you, y'all made bad choices. He says, and when you start making the right choices, he says, you're going to be able to be the person that you want to be. And I thought, man, that was that easy. I believed a label that somebody put on me, that you're paralyzed or that you're an addict, or, that I believe that because people tell you that you're a loser, you're not good enough. I'm always a confident guy. But again, when the courts are telling you that you're in trouble, you start to believe some of that stuff. So when I got out, I was clear-headed. I had a purpose. No, I'm not that. I'm Chad. I'm Chad Dunn. That's what I am. Right. And so from there, I thought, man, this is easy. It's conscious choices. That's what it's all about. And I got a tattooed on my arm right here, Tupac. My every move is a calculated step. Think before you do. Life is easy.
I love that, man. I love that when you talk about labels, because I think that for a lot of us, we succumb to the labels that are given to us, and either the ones that we put on ourselves or the ones that are given by other people. And that starts to affect our identity, and that starts to affect our personality. And then our personal reality is then a reflection of that. So it is so important, as you said, not to be the inner critic, but to be the inner coach, because your success does begin with your own self.
Chapter 1 of my book is based off self-identity. Become who you are. The greatest thing out there is to know thyself, and that's the biggest thing. I don't think people know themselves right now. I've asked everybody questions when they come into the clinic, even, and again, I do a big mental evaluation. We talk about the physical evaluation of what we do when we train somebody or when they come into it for a rehab or for whatever, even when I'm sitting down talking with people on the mental aspect. First thing I do, I'm testing their mental, right? And I'm not just testing it, but I'm seeing where they're at. Are they capable of making recovery? Are they optimistic about it like we talked about? Do they know who they are? And so the first question I always ask people, I say, so tell me a little something about yourself. And most people smile and they say, well, I don't know. They say, well, why do you don't know? It's a physical aspect. I'm a 51-year-old husband, loving father. I got a grandson. I got a 4-month-old grandson right now. I'm a grandpa. I'm a convicted felon. I smoked crack. I got 6 DUIs. I've been in federal prison. That's who I am. But that's the physical stuff, my self-identity, man, I'm very optimistic. I'm going to be beside you the whole time. I'm going to be the last guy, no matter what, through the ups and the downs to help push you with energy. I'm going to give you all the codes in my life that I can. And I'll give you the shirt off my back, because together I think that we all can make a change, and that's my identity. So people might know their identity, but that's your beliefs. That's your values. Everyone says I'm a hard worker. That's not who you are. That's just one of your beliefs and your values, But they don't want to say because, again, they might have a past. I lived with the weight on my back for a long time, not letting people know I was a convicted felon because in the health industry, working with kids and training, you don't want to be judged, And so that was the thing. So when I first did my first podcast, it was called Make the Difference. I let that weight out. My buddy I knew since elementary, he said, Chad, man, you got to tell your story. He said, people got to hear this. And so I went to my wife and I told her, she said, do not mention move. We just opened up, right? And I don't want it to jeopardize business or anything else. We got kids, family, and all that shit. I don't want it. So I did the podcast. I was very, very selective of not using move and just trying to tell about my whole life itself. And we got done. I let her listen to it. She said, man, everybody got to hear this. And so I sent it to a good friend of mine who I knew would be not judgmental. And he's got kids. He's a very, they're very good kids and they're sports and they do everything. And I said, hey, take a listen to this. Let me know what you think. He said, can I send this to my kids? So my message was out and my weight was off. And that was the time that I knew right there, that's the next phase of my life, and I want to help people. We help people inside four walls all day long in the gym,
That is no truer words to be said than that, Chad. Like, it'll work if you work it, right?
And it's basically, well, how do you know it works? Because I've done it.
Yeah. Now, as a certified behavioral change specialist, you've already mentioned the 1 in a row. I was wondering, is there another core framework or model that you rely on to help clients move beyond their limitations?
The other thing is you have to have a plan. No matter what, you have to have a plan. And I think that's the biggest thing with behavior, changing your behavior, is that everything's based off planning. You have to journal. You have to do all your stuff. When people look back at it, and I use both the system, of being inside and also for being on the streets, the code of conduct of being a user, a drug dealer, whatever. There's still a plan. Every drug dealer got a plan. They just don't have an exit strategy. It's very simple. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm going to make money. They just don't know how the heck they're going to get out of it. And some don't ever get out of it, right? They don't have a plan. Right. A drug user, they got a plan. Shit, they work harder than anybody out there. They're going to go find the next score. They're going to look on the sidewalk for a piece of crack. They're going to go, rob, pillage, steal, do whatever we got to do. But we have a plan. We just don't have an exit strategy, right? So what I tell everybody, you got to have a plan, but you got to have an entrance and you got to have an exit. no matter what. And it's got to start from A to Z. You're going to get messed up. The engine's not the most important part of the train. The caboose is also the most important train, because if the caboose don't get where the engine go, there was some derailment along the line. Right. And so it's got to take every step. That's the one in a row. I go, and not to talk about the AA programs or anything like this, but in my opinion is that, most people have relapses in the 12-step program because there's no 13th step. There's no 14th step. They completed a thing, now you got to keep living that purpose. But like, I got 365 steps to my recovery or my success or my growth every day, because it's every day of every year. It's one in a row. So I think if we put steps on there, I think that's a problem. Having a journal and having a goal, make them small. And when you complete that one, that's a 50-meter target. You can hit that because it's very close. But you also have to set a 300-meter target out there. And, you're going to have to dial your sights in. You're going to have to, make sure you have close vision. You're going to have to make some aids for the wind and some other calculations. But if you really focus in on it, you can hit that 300-meter target. So that's what I talk with everybody. When we do the rehab, we're coming back from things. We have to have a plan. We have to have a goal. That's what I did. People don't look at probation, but really what probation is it's having a plan. Most people just can't follow a plan. That's why they fail probation. Probation was easy for me because I love doing plans. Now I understand what my goal was. I knew the beginning. I knew the end. So probation, if people don't think of it as a bad thing. Oh man, I got 5 years probation. No, they give you a 5-year plan. I got 3 years probation. No, that's a 3-year plan. You got to do it. Well, some of those plans, from 3 years, they end up violating. They end up going 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, go back to prison. It becomes a lifetime, right? Don't make everything a life sentence. If you complete one plan, move on to the next one, and then that's where you'll have that exit strategy. The closer you get to the top, I don't really like to raise the bar. I like to raise the floor. If you ever fall back, you ain't falling back that far.
I like that. So one of your messages, Chad, I know that you've been quoted as saying, on the other side of pain lies greatness, right? And that is a powerful one. How do you communicate this responsibly to clients who are dealing with real pain or trauma without it becoming toxic positivity, as some people may call it?
That whole statement came out. I was training a former NBA player, Critic, played for ASU, Sun Devils basketball guy. He called me up. He went through a patella tendon fracture, patella fracture in his career, ended it up. And he called me up one day when we'd open up Move. And he says, "Hey, Chad, I got a deal. I was talking with my buddies. I turned 31 on August 31st, and I'm going to run 31 miles. I said, Carrick, you a basketball player. You run sprints up and down the court. You don't need to run 31 miles. That's more than a marathon." He says, "I understand, but we were talking about ESPN 30 for 30. I said, shit, 31 for 31 don't sound too bad." So he came in and started training. Now, alongside of him training for this 31-mile journey was Kristen, my paralyzed girl. Right? She was in the gym working out. And then I had all my basketball kids and everybody else training. So Carrick was down there motivated by everybody. And Carrick's a very motivating guy himself. Obviously, they want to run 31 miles. Now, mind you, I had this in there. That was on August 31st as well. It's probably 126 degrees out here. And he's going to run 31 miles. He's supposed to leave at 5 a.m. in the morning. It did not happen. His team slept in. He had a caravan. He had a whole medic team that was going to be with him. I wanted to be there just at the end of it all. I had to go to work a little bit later. So we took off. I asked him, "What's the deal?" He says, "I think I'm going to have to start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I got to wait for some other people now." 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Phoenix is not a good time to start running on August 31st. Right. But sure enough, he took off running North Scottsdale, came off running down to Tempe. His ending point of his plan or his goal was going to be Desert Financial Arena, where he played basketball at ASU's campus. So I get done at work at 5. I drive up the freeway thinking 4 hours. I had his pace kind of timed out. I knew where he was going to be. I didn't see him. So I drove home. I'm sitting there cooking dinner, and I get a message on my phone about 7 o'clock. He says, "Coming up on Scottsdale Fashion Square Mall. I'm hurt. I'm hurting." So I didn't know if he's hurt physically. I don't know if he's hurt mentally, if it actually injury might have happened, or is it just the pain of running? At this time, he was probably about 16, 18 miles in. So I text him back. He says, "I'm still going. I'm still going." So I jump in my car, I drive up the road. I'm making my way back down, and on the corner of the street, I see him running by himself. Raining outside, so he did have a little bit of cool weather coming with the rain, but now it's hot and humid in Arizona. Not a good situation. We've got about 10 miles left. 10 miles left. So I roll down my window. He don't see me. I roll down my window. I say, "Come on, baby, let's go. Let's go, baby." And everybody knows that's kind of what I always say. If I'm going to get this, I'm going to say, "Let's go, baby. Come on, I'm going to give you the motivation." He said, "Chad, I heard that, man. I got my second win." We started running. So he started running. I'm driving next to him. We're going over to Tempe Town Lake, the bridge and all this stuff. I turned the corner. There's a sign on ASU. It says, "Making a better future because of you." And here comes a former alumni running around the corner, right? What a perfect night. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. Runs the back, sprints up the hill, finishes at a good pace. 31 miles, achievement done. And I'm sitting there, I got the camera out, and he says, man, he says, when you're running out there all by yourself and you feel the pain and you hear nothing but the night's echo coming on you, if you can get through the pain, on the other side is greatness. He said, I got one more mile in me to run home. I said, don't do that. We didn't plan for running 32, right? Just plan for 31, because next thing you know, you run an extra mile, you're probably going to pull a hammy or something going to happen. Again, that's not in our plan. Let's just call it right here. Opens up a bottle of champagne, pours on. But like he said, on the other side of pain is greatness, And I noticed that, it was painful holding my dream in. It was painful holding my identity in, But when I released it, it gave me new opportunities, And I'm not done yet.
I love that, how you drew that conclusion. Let me ask you this. For someone who's feeling stuck right now, someone who needs to make a comeback, whether that is physically, mentally, maybe they feel like they've got the world on their shoulders, what are a few quick steps that they can take, even this week, tomorrow, to begin moving beyond their limitations?
Thing I tell everybody, man, is you got to find silence. You got to find silence. In this world nowadays, there's nothing but noise. It comes from a radio, it comes from an earphone, it comes from a speaker. We go out running, we put earphones in. One thing we don't have anymore in this world is silence. You need to think. You need to slow down. When they put me in incarceration, I'm sitting there in them jail cells, man, it was quiet for a little bit until all the doors start slinging, people, shackles, all that stuff. But when the lights go out and everything, it is quiet, and you have time to think. Is this really who you are? Is this really what you want? So you have to put yourself in a box. You have to turn off the noise, turn off the radio, block the dog out, whatever you got to do, but spend about 10 minutes a week in silence. I even do it 5 minutes a day. Just sit there. I don't turn the radio on when I go to work. I drive in silence. It's time for me to think. It's time for me to gear up. It's time for me to focus on what I'm going to do for that day and what I need to accomplish. So the first thing, start of the day, you got to be in silence. Second thing is breathe. Cold plunge, cryotherapy, everything now, what they're doing. We're trying to put people in stressful situations. We as humans, we don't want our offsprings. We don't want our kids to be in stressful situations. We're good parents. We're great coaches. We're trying to keep them out of these bad things. But what happens also is we've done that. We've also got it to where we've helped out people, and we got to where they don't have to think no more. Even training these athletes, they all got a tire shoe coach. I got a yoga coach. I got a stretching coach. I got a sports performance coach. I got a skills coach. We got coaches for everything. But one thing we don't have a coach for is for thinking. Unless you got somebody like you and me that are mental performance guys that are going to get you to think. And I think that's what's missing in our society right now is people don't think, So you got to breathe. And when you're breathing in silence, you're going to be able to hear yourself think. And if you think about the right things and you think about what you really want and what really matters, I used to say friends and fun, the 2 F words, right? Friends and fun. Now I look for family and future. Still the 2 F words, but it's a change of perspective of what it is, And that's really what's going to make it. When you change that perspective, you hear yourself, you say it to yourself, you own it. Every tattoo I have on my body is my story, right? I own it. That shit's written on me. Right? It's permanent. I'm not going to go backwards. I made that from day one when I got out. Believe, my side here, it says, believe only half of what you hear and all of what you see. Right? Don't tell me, show me.
Right. And that's where it's at. That is where it's at. Well, Chad Dunn, I want to thank you, man, for hopping on the show and spending some time with us. Appreciate your message, and appreciate you being one of the soldiers in the army of the light out there and helping people make their comebacks and stepping into the best version of themselves. Let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find out more about Chad Dunn, where they can find out more about your book, and just get some more information about you and what you do.
The book's going to be published on Amazon October 28th. So I've got ebook, hardback, and paperback coming out. mindovervirtualeverything.com website. You can also look up Mind Over Virtual Everything on Instagram, Chad Dunn 22 on all the social media hashtags. You can follow along, Move Performance. You'll see all the great stuff that we do of these comebacks from therapy, sports, and all that stuff. But again, Ian, just like you, man, it's one day at a time, one step at a time. When you know who you are and you don't put limitations on yourself, you're able to do miraculous things such as what you've done. And keep inspiring the future. I love it.
Well, we appreciate you, Chad. Thank you so much, man. And I want to thank all of our viewers and all of our listeners for joining us on this episode. We're going to wrap this up like we always do. Remember to stay positive, stay persistent, and know that mindset is everything. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.